Lucian's True History by Samostata Lucian. Lucian, his true history. Even as champions and wrestlers and such as practice strength and agility of the body are not only careful to remain sound of constitution of health and hold the under ordinary course of exercise, but sometimes also to recreate themselves with seasonable intermission, and it's esteemed as a main point of their practice. So I think it necessary for scholars and such addict themselves to the study of learning. After they had traveled long in pursuit of serious authors to relax a little at the tension of their thoughts, and that they may be more apt and able to endure a continued course of study. In this kind of repose will be more comfortable and fit their purpose better, if it be employed in the reading of such works as shall not only yield a bare content of the pleasing and comely composure of them, but shall also give occasion and of some learned speculation to the mind, which I suppose I have effected in these books of mine, wherein not only the novelty of the subject, nor the pleasingness of the project may tickle the reader with delight, nor hear so many notorious lies delivered persuasively and in the way of truth, but because anything here by me set down in a comical fashion glance over at some or other of the old poets, historiographers, and philosophers, which in their writings have recorded many monstrous and intolerable truths, whose names I have quoted down, but that I knew the reading would betray them to you. Cialis, son of Syracuse and Scythian, wrote of the region of the Indians and the state of those countries, matters which he neither saw himself nor ever heard come from any man. Ink&Abysss also wrote many strange miracles of the great sea, which all men knew to be lies and fictions, yet so composed that they were not their delight. And many others have made the choice of the like argument, of which some have published their own travels and peregrinations, where they have described greatness of beasts, the fierce condition of men, with the strange and uncouth manner of life. But the first father and the founder of all this foolery was Homer's Ulysses, who tells a long tale to Lascinius of the servitude of the winds and of wild men with one eye in the forehead that fed upon raw flesh of beast with many heads, and the transformation of his friends by enchanted potions, which he made the silly freaks believe for great sooth. This coming to my perusal, I cannot condemn ordinary men for lying, when I saw and request among them that would be counted philosophical persons, yet could not but wonder at them, that, writing so manifest lies, they should not think to be taken with the manner, and this made me also ambition to leave some monument of myself behind me, that I might not only man exempt from this liberty of lying, and because I have no matter to verity to employ my pen, it for nothing hath befallen me with style to publish untruths. But when an honester mind than others have done, for this one thing I confidently pronounce for truth, that I lie. And this I hope may be excuse for all the rest. When I confessed I am falsian, for I write matters which I neither saw nor suffered, nor heard by reports of others, which are no being, no possible ever to have at the beginning. Let no man therefore in any case give my credit to them, disanchoring on a time from the pillars of Hercules, to fighting me well within my purpose, I thrust into the West Ocean. The occasion that moved me to take such a voyage in hand was only a curiosity of mind, a desire of novelties, and longing to learn out of the bounds of ocean, and what people inhabit the further shore, for which purpose I made plentiful provisions of victuals and fresh water, got 50 companions of the same humor to associate me in my travels, furnished myself with store of munition, gave a round sum of money to an expert pilot that could direct us in our course, and new rigged and repaired a tall ship strongly to hold the tedious and difficult journey. Thus sailed we forward a day and a night with prosperous wind, and as long as we had any sight of land, no great haste on our way. But the next morrow, about sunrising, the wind blew high, and the waves began to swell, and the darkness fell upon us, so we could not see to strike our sails, but gave our ship over to the wind and weather. Thus we were tossed in the tempest of the space of 19 days together. On the 4th day, the sun upon a sudden brake out, and we descried not far off us an island full of mountains and woods, about which the sea did not rage boisterously, for the storm was now reasonably calmed. There we thrust in and went on shore, and cast ourselves upon the ground, and so lay a long time, as utterly tired with our misery at sea. In the end, we arose up and divided ourselves. 30 we left to guard the ship. Myself and 20 more went to discover the island, and had not gone above 3 furlongs from the sea through a wood, but he saw a brazen pillar erected, whereupon Greek letters were engraven. And thus, though now much worn and hard to discern, importing thus far traveled Hercules and Bacchus. There were also near unto the two portuaries cut out in the rock, one of the many, the quantity of an acre of ground, the other less, which made me imagine the lesser to be Bacchus, and the other Hercules, and giving them due adoration, we proceeded on our journey. And far we had not gone, but came to a river, the stream whereof seemed to run with as rich wine as any made in Kairos, and the great beddeth in some places to bear a ship, which made me to give a more credit and inscription upon the pillar. When I saw such apparent sign of Punch's peregrination, we resolved to travel up the stream and to find whence the river had its original. But when we came to the head, no spring appeared, but a great vine tree of infinite number, which their roots distilled pure wine, which made the river run so abundantly. The stream was also well stored with fish, of which we took a few, in taste of the color much resembling wine, but as many as we ate of them fell drunk upon it, for they were opened and cut up. We found them to be filled with much left afterwards. We mixed some fresh water with the fish with them, which allayed the strong taste of the wine. When we crossed the stream, where we found it passable, and came upon a world of vines of incredible number, which towards the earth had firm stalks of a good growth, but at the tops of them were women, from hip upward, having all their proportions perfect and complete, as a painter's picture out of Daphne, who's turned into a tree when she was overtaken by Apollo. At their fingers' ends sprung out branches full of grapes, and the hair of their heads was nothing else but winding wires and leaves and clusters of grapes. When we come to them, they saluted and joined hands with us, and spake us upon into the Lydian and some of the Indian language, but most of them in Greek. They also kissed us with their mouths, but he that was also kissed fell drunk. Was not his own man a good while after? They could not abide to have any fruit pulled from them, but would roar and cry out pitifully if any man offered it. Some of them desired to have carnal mixture with us, and two of our company were so bold to entertain their offer, could never afterwards be loosed from them, but were knit fast together at their nether parts, from whence they grew together, took root together, and their fingers began to spring out with branches and crooked wires, as if they were ready to spring out fruit. whereupon we forsook them and fled to our ships, and told the company at our coming what betide unto us, how our fellows were entangled of their copulation with the vines. Then we took certain of our vessels and filled them with some of the water and some of the wine out of the river, and lodged for the night near the shore. On the morrow, we put to sea again, the wind serving us weakly, but about noon, when we had lost sight of the island, upon a sudden as the whirlwind caught us, to turn our ships round about and lifted us up some 3,000 furlongs into the air, and suffered us not to settle again in the sea, but we hung above ground, and we were carried aloft with a mighty wind that filled our sails strongly. Thus, for 7 days, space sailed with so many nights, we were driven along in that manner. And on the 8th day, we came to a view of a great country in the air, like to a shining island of round proportion, gloriously glittering with light, and approaching to it, we there arrived and took land, and surveying the country, we found it to be inhabited both inhabited and husband, and as long as the day lasted, we could see nothing there. But when the night was come by, many other islands appeared unto us, some greater, some less, all of the color of fire, and another kind earth underneath, in which there were cities and seas and rivers and woods and mountains, which we conjectured to be earth by us inhabited. And going further into the land, we met with all, taken by the kind of people they call Hippogibbians. These Hippogibbians are men riding upon monstrous vultures, which they used instead of horses. For the vultures, they were exceedingly great. Every one of these 3 heads apiece, you may imagine the greatness thus far, for every feather of their wings was bigger and longer than the mast of a tall ship. Charged was to fly around the country, and all the strangers they found to bring them to the king. And their fortune was then to seize upon us, and by them we were presented to him. As soon as he saw us, he conjectured by our habit what countrymen we were, in which we affirmed. And how could you make way, said he, through so much air as to get hither? Then we delivered the whole discourse of our fortunes to him, whereupon he began to tell us likewise of his own adventures, how that he was also a man by the name of Endymion, and wrapped up long since from earth as he was asleep, and brought hither, where he was made king of the country, and said it was that region which to us below seemed to be the moon. But he bade us to be of good cheer and fear no danger, for we should want nothing we stood in need of, and if the war he was now in hand withal against the sun succeeded fortunately, we should live with him in the highest degree of happiness. And then we asked him of what enemies he had and the cause of the quarrel. And he answered, Pantheon, the king of the inhabitants of the sun, for that is also people as well of the moon, had made war against us long time upon this occasion. I once assembled all poor people and needy persons within my dominions, proposing to send a colony to inhabit the morning star, because the country was a desert and nobody dwelling in it. Thus Pantheon envying crossed me in my design and sent his mimics to meet with us in the midway, but whom we were surprised at the time, being not prepared for the encounter, and we are forced to retire. Now, therefore, my purpose once again is to denounce war and publish a plantation of people there. If therefore you participate with us in our expedition, I will furnish you one with a prime vulture and armor answerable to service. For tomorrow we must set forwards with all our hearts, said I, if it please you. Then we were feasted and abode with him, and in the morning arose to set ourselves in order of battle. For our scouts had given us knowledge that the enemy was at hand. Our forces in number amounted to the 100,000. Besides, much as bear burthen the engineers, and the foot fences and the strange aids of these 80,000 were Hippogamians, and 20,000 rode upon Lachinopters, which were mighty great fowl, and instead of feathers, covered over with wart leaves, but their wing feathers were much like the leaves of lettuces. After them were placed the Chiprogoblins and the Scordomachians. There came also to aid from the Bear Star 30,000 Philoloxtians and 50,000 Minidormians. These Philotoxians ride upon great fleas, which have their dominion. For every flea among them is as big as a dozen elephants. The Antiromians are footmen, yet flew in the air without feathers. In this manner, every man had a large mantle reaching down to his foot, which a wind blowing against filled it like a sail. And they were carried along as if they'd been on boats. The most part of these in fight were targeteers. It was said also that they were expected from the stars over the Cappuccinian 10,000 Struthbalians and 5,000 Hippodrinians. But I had no sight of them, for they were not yet come, and therefore had durst write nothing, though wonderful and incredible reports were given out of them. This was the number of the Endymions' army. The furniture was alike, their helmets of bean hulls, which were great with them and very strong. The breastplates of all Lupians cut in the scales for to take shells of the Lupians and fastening them together and make breastplates of them, which are impenetrable and as hard as any horn. Their shields and swords like ours in Greece. And when the time of battle was come, they were ordered in this manner. The right wing was supplied with the Hippogippians, where the king himself was in person with the choicest soldiers in the army. Among them, who we also were ranged, the Lacanopters made the left wing and the aides were placed in the main battle, as every man's fortune fell. The foot, which in number were 6,000 myriads, were disposed of this manner. There was many spiders in those parts of the mighty bigness, every one in quantity exceeding the one of the island's Cyclades. These were appointed to spin web in the air between the moon and the morning star, which was done in an instant and made a plain campaign upon which the foot forces were planted, who had for their leader an Xeretian, the son of the Igdianax, and 2 other associates. But of the enemy side, the left wing consisted of Hippomyrmex, and among them the Pathian himself. These are beasts of huge bigness and winged, carrying the resemblance of our Emirates, but for their greatness, for those of the largest size, were the quantity of 2 acres, and not only the riders supplied the places of soldiers, but they also did much mischief with their horns. They were in the number of 50,000, and in the right wing range air canopes, of which there was also about 50,000, all archers riding upon great gnats. Then followed the arrow Carrigs, who were also light-armed footmen but good soldiers, casting out their slings afar off huge great turnips, and whosoever was hit with them lived not long after, but died with the stink that proceeded from their wounds. It is said they were used to anoint their bullets with the poison of mallows. After them were placed the Columasites, men-at-arms, and good hand-strokes in number about 50,000. They are called Columasites because of their shields were made of mushrooms and their spear stalks of herb asparagus. Near to them was placed the Ink&Abysss that were sent from Dogstar to aid him. These were men with dog faces riding upon winged acorns. But the slingers that should have come out of Via Lasetta and the Nephlio centaurs came short of these aids, for the battle was done before their arrival, so that they did them no good. And indeed, slingers came not at all. Wherefore they say Pantheon and displeasure overran their country, These were joint forces of the Pantheon brought into the field, and when they were joined in battle, after the signal was given, and when the asses on the other side had bewrayed, for these are to him instead of trumpets, the fight began. In the left wing of the Heliotins, or the Sun Soldiers, fled presently, and would not abide to receive the charge of the Hippogippians, but turned their backs immediately. And many more were put to the sword, but the right wing of theirs was too hard for our left wing, and there also turn their black backs and fly, especially when they found their own left wing to be overthrown. Thus they were wholly discomforted on all hands. Many were taken prisoner, and many slain. Much blood was spilled. Some fell upon the clouds, which made them look of a red color. And sometimes they appear to us about sunsetting. Some drop down to earth, which made me suppose upon such occasion that Homer thought Jupiter ran blood for the death of his son, Sharpedion. Returning from the pursuit, we erected upon the spider's web, the other for the fight in the air, which we set upon the clouds. As soon as this was done, news came to us by our scouts that the Nephelio-centaurs were coming on, in which indeed should have come to the Pantheon before the fight, and when they drew so near onto us, we could take full view of them. It was a strange sight to behold such monsters, composed of flying horses and men, that part which resembled mankind, which was from the waist upwards, did equal in greatness of the Rhodian Colossus. In that which was like a horse was as big as a great ship of burden, and in such multitude that I was fearful to set down their number lest it be taken for a lie. And for their leader they had the Sagittarius out of the Zodiac. When they heard that their friends were foiled, they sent a messenger to the Pantheon to renew the fight, whereupon they set themselves in an array, and fell upon the Silentians of the Moon Soldiers, that were troubled and disordered following the chase, and scattered and gathering the spoils, and put them all to flight, and pursued the king into a city, and killed the greatest part of his birds, overturned the trophy he had set up, and overcame the whole country that was spun by spiders. Myself and 2 companions were taken alive. When the Pantheon himself was come, they set up other trophies in token of victory, and on the morrow we were carried prisoners into the sun, our arms bound behind us with a piece of the cobweb. It would they by no means lay any siege to the city, but we turned and built up a wall in the midst of the air to keep the light of the sun from falling upon the moon. And they made it a double wall, wholly compact of clouds, so that manifest eclipse of the moon ensued, and all things detained in perpetual night. Wherewith Endymion was so much oppressed that he sent ambassadors to entreat the demolishing of the building, and beseeched him that he would not damn them to live a lie in darkness, promising to pay him tribute, to be his friend and associate, and never after to stir against him. Pathion's council twice assembled to consider upon this offer, and in the first meeting would remit nothing of conceived displeasure, but on the morrow they altered their minds to see these terms. The Heliotins and their colleagues had made a peace with the Silentians and their associates upon these conditions: that the Heliotins should cast down the wall and deliver the prisoners they have taken upon a rationable ransom, and that the Silentians should leave the other stars at liberty, and raise no war against the Heliotins, but aid and assist another if any of them should be invaded. That the king of the Silentians should yearly pay to the king of the Heliotins and weight tribute of 10,000 vessels of dew, and deliver 10,000 their people to be pledges for the fidelity. That the colony to be sent to the Morning Star should be jointly supplied by them both, and liberty given to any else would be shares in it. That these articles of peace should be engraven in a pillar of amber, to be erected in the midst of the air upon the confines of the country, for the performance whereof were sworn of the Heliotins, Pyronites, and Therataites, and Phlogus, and the Seleniatins, Nitor, Menius, and Philoppians. Thus was peace concluded, the wall immediately demolished, and that there were prisoners delivered. Being returned into the moon, they came forth to meet us, Endymion himself and his friends, who embraced us with tears and desired to make us abode with him, and to be partners in the colony, promising to give me his own son in marriage. For there was no women amongst them, which I by no means would yield unto, but desired all loves to be dismissed again into the sea, and he finding it impossible to persuade us to his purpose, after 7 days feasting, gave us leave to depart. Now, what strange novelty worthy of note I observed during the time of my abode there, I will relate to you. The first is, they are not begotten of women, but of mankind. They have no other marriage but of males. The name of women is utterly unknown among them, until they accomplish the age of 5 and 25 years. They are given in marriage to others. From that time forwards, they take another marriage to themselves. For as soon as the infant is conceived, the leg begins to swell, and afterwards, when the time of birth come, they give it a lance and take it out dead. Then they to broad with open mouth towards the wind, so it takes life. And I think thereof Grecians call it the belly of the leg. because therein they bear their children instead of a belly. I will tell you now of a thing more strange than this. There are kind of men among them called Deuterians, which were begotten in this manner. They cut out the right stone of a man's cot and set it in the ground, from which springeth up great tree of flesh with branches and leaves, bearing a kind of fruit much like an acorn, but a cubit in length, which they gather when they are ripe and cut men out of them. Their privy members are to be set up and taken off as soon as the occasion. Rich men have them made ivory, poor men of wood, wherein they perform the act of generation and accompany their spouses. When a man is come to full age, he dieth not, but is dissolved like smoke, and is turned into air. One kind of food common to them all, for they kindle fire and boil frogs upon the coals, which with them infinite numbers flying into the air, and whilst they are boiling they sit round them as if they were about a table, and lap up the smoke with that riseth from them, and feast themselves there within, and this is all their feeding. For their drink have air beaten in the motor, which yieldeth a kind of moisture much like unto dew. They have no avoidance of excrements, either urine or dung, neither they have any issue for that purpose like unto us. Their boys emit copulation not like unto ours, but in their hams, a little above the calf of the leg, for they are open. They hold it a great ornament to be bald for hairy persons aboard with them. Yet among the stars that cometh it is thought commendable, as some have travelled those coasts and reported it unto us. Such beards as they have growing a little above their knees. They have no nails on their feet, for their whole foot is but one toe. Every one of them at the point of rump hath a long colwort growing instead of a tail, always green and flourishing, which though a man fall upon his back cannot be broken. The drooping of their noses is more sweet than honey. When they labor or exercise themselves, they emit their body with milk, whereunto, if a little of that honey chance to drop, it returned into cheese. They make very fat oil of their beans, and as of delicate savor as any sweet ointment. They have many vines in those parts, which yield like our hailstones. And I think that when the vines are shaken in a strong wind, there falls a storm of hail amongst us by the breaking down of those kind of berries. Their bellies stand instead of satchels to put in their necessaries, which they may open and shut at their pleasure, where they have neither liver or any kind of entrails. They are only rough and hairy within, so that when their children are cold, they may enclose them therein to keep them warm. The rich men have garments of glass, very soft and delicate. The poor sort of brass woven, whereof they have a great plenty, which they enseam with water to make it fit for the workmen. as we do our wool. If I would write which manner of eyes they have, I doubt I should be taken for a liar and publishing the matter so incredible. Yet I cannot choose but to tell it, for they have eyes to take in and out as please themselves. And when a man is disposed, he may take them out and lay them by till the occasion to use them. And when they put them in, they see again. Many of them have lost their own eyes, borrows others, for the rich have many lying about them. Their ears are all made of leaves of plane trees, except those that come of acorns, for they have made of wood. I saw another strange thing in the same court, a mighty great glass laying upon the top of a pit of no great depth, whereinto if any man descend, he shall hear everything that is spoken upon the earth. If he but look into the glass, he shall see all cities and nations as well as if he were among them. There I had the sight of all my friends in the whole country about. Whether they saw me or not, I cannot tell. But if they believe not to be so, let them take the pains to thither themselves, and they shall find my words true. Then we took our leaves of the king, and such were near him, and took shipping and departed. At which time Dominion bestowed upon me 2 mantles made of their glass, and 5 of brass, with complete armor of these shells of lupin, all which I left behind me in the whale, and sent with us thousands of Hippogypians to conduct us 5,000 furlongs on our way. In our course, we coasted many other countries, lastly arrived at the Morning Star newly inhabited, where we landed and took in fresh water. From thence we entered the Zodiac, passing by the sun, and leaving it on our right hand, took our course near unto the shore, but landed not in the country, though our company didn't much desire it, for the wind would not give us leave. But we saw it was a flourishing region, fat and well-watered, abundant with all delights. But the Nepleucentides, espying us, who were mercenary soldiers to the Pantheon, made to our ship as fast as they could, finding us to be friends, said no more unto us, for the Hippogypians were departed before. Then we made forward all next night and day, and about evening tide followed we came to a city called Ink&Abysss, which still holding on a course downwards. The city is seated in the air between the Pleiades and the Hyades, somewhat lower than the Zodiac, and arriving there, not a man was to be seen, but the lights in great numbers running to and fro, which were employed, some in the marketplace, and some about the haven, of which many were little, and as a man may spy, but poor little things. Some again were great and mighty, exceeding glorious and resplendent, and they were places of the receipts for them all. Every one had his name, well as men, and we did hear them speak. These did us no harm, but invited us to feast with them. Yet we were so fearful that we durst neither eat nor sleep as long as we were there. Their court of justice standeth in the midst of the city, where the governor sitteth all night long, calling every one by name, and that he answereth not as a judge to die, as if it had forsaken his ranks. Their death is to be quenched. We also, standing amongst them, saw what was done, and heard what answer lights made for themselves, and the reasons they alleged for tarrying so long. There we also knew our own light, and spake unto it, and questioned it of our affairs at home, and how all did there, which related everything unto us. That night we made our abode there, and on the next morrow returned to our ship, and sailing near unto the clouds had a sight of the city Nephioshigia, which beheld with great wonder, but entered not into it, for the wind was against us. The king thereof was Cronus, the son of Pythian, and I cannot choose but to think upon the poet Aristophanes, and how wise a man he was, and how true a reporter, and how little cause there is to question his fidelity for what he had written. The third after, the ocean appeared plainly unto us, though we could not see no land in there. But there was in the air, and those countries seemed to be fiery and glittering color. The fourth day about noon, the wind gently forbearing, settled us fair and leisurely into the sea, and soon as we found ourselves upon the water, we were surprised with an incredible gladness, and our joy was unexpressionable. We feasted and made merry with such provision we had. We cast ourselves into the sea and swam up and down for our disport, for it was calm. But oftentimes it falleth out that the charge to better is the beginning of greater evils. For then we had made only 2 days' sail in the water. As soon as the third day appeared, about sunrising, upon a sudden we saw many monstrous fishes and whales, but one above the rest, containing in greatness 1,500 furlongs, which came upon gaping upon us and troubled the sea round about him, so that he was compassed on every side forth in foam, showing his teeth afar off, which were longer than any beech trees are within us, all sharp as needles and as white as ivory. Then we took, as we thought, our last leaves of another, and embracing you together, expected our ending day. But the monster was presently with us, and swallowed us up, ship and all. But by chance he caught us between his chops, for the ship slipped through the void passages down his entrails. When we were thus got within him, we continued a good while in darkness, and could see nothing till he began to gape Then we perceived it to be a monstrous whale of huge breadth and height, big enough to contain a city that would hold 10,000 men. And within we found small fishes and many other creatures chopped into bits, and the masts of ships and anchors, bones of men and luggage. In the midst of him was earth and hills, which were raised, as I conjectured, by the settling of mud which came down his throat. For woods grew upon them, and trees of all sorts and manner of herbs, and it looked as if he had been husbanded. The compass of the land was 250 furlongs, and there were also to be seen all kinds of sea fowls, as gulls, halcyons, and others that made their nest upon the trees. Then we fell to weeping abundantly. But at last I roused my company and brought up our ship and struck fire. Then we made ready supper of what such we had. For the abundance of all sort of fish lay ready by us, and yet what enough left which we brought out of the morning.